This is the No More OGs podcast. From controversial topics to creating financial freedom, we will talk to real people about real situations, providing real solutions. No celebrity endorsements. Bringing you unfiltered discussions, dope interviews, and giving you the blueprint to create the culture that you will be proud of. So kick back, turn up the volume, and let's get to it. Here's your host, yours truly, Mr. Purpose on Demand, Mr. Retired at 37, Mr. Tim Jackson.
What's going on? It's your man, Tim Jackson. This is the No More OGs podcast. I'm your host, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you're joining me today. Be sure to do me a favor, like, follow, subscribe, turn on your notifications. You know, when you have good information like mine, sometimes they put me low down on the algorithm. But honestly, the less you watch content like this, the less you'll see me. So share this with everyone you know so that we can learn and grow together. Also, the $9 Academy is live, you guys. I'm going to be teaching concepts that you should have known your entire life, but I'm not price gouging you. I don't want you guys to feel like you don't have enough money to pay for the things that we're teaching you, because what happens typically is someone gives you a bunch of great information and then they want you to sign up for their $500 course, and then once you get into the $500 course, they want you to sign up for the $10,000 course. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm doing. I'm going to give you the game. It's going to be $9. You can either pay $9 per course or you can join the membership. I'm thinking I'm going to make the membership around $29 to give you access to all the courses, $29 per month, that is. So check it out. Let me know what you think. The first couple of courses are live right now. So without further ado, we're going to get into this episode. So today we have a special guest. You guys, you know my motto, you know my theory. I want to bring people to you that are right around you, that you see every single day, but you may not know who they are because they're not as flashy, they're not as loud, and they don't have the platforms that maybe a celebrity who's not trying to help you may have. But these are people who are actually coming into social media and they're wanting to teach you what they know. They want to tell you their stories so that you can understand that you can also do it. So without further ado, all the way from Houston, Texas, I want to introduce to you Mr. Sujay Mehta. What's going on, my guy? How you doing?
What's up, man? It's a pleasure to be here. You know, first time being in the studio, and it's beautiful. It's amazing, and really respect what you do, man. So it's an amazing thing.
I appreciate that. Sujay reached out to me after watching, I think, the episode with Byron Sellers. Shout out to my guy, Byron Sellers from the Mobile Home Elite Investors. And, you know, one of the reasons I created this platform was because I felt like a lot of people don't have access to good people. What you see online is typically someone who's trying to scam you or get over on you, or they have the information, but they want to charge you some crazy, ridiculous rate to give it to them. And then after they give you a piece of it, then they want you to pay them more and more money. Listen, I'm a capitalist, okay? I'm all about capitalism, but I understand that the audience that I'm targeting, you know, they typically don't have the access to the people who can just give them a little bit of information to get them from where they are to where they want to be. So you reached out, you were like, hey, man, I'm in the hotel. Right. Yeah. And I responded, you know, and I try to let people know, like, I'm a human being just like you guys. I'm no different than you are. Like, I don't believe in celebrity worship, so I'm not too humble to not respond to someone.
No, and that's a beautiful thing, right? Like, in the palm of our hands, in our cell phone, we have the information of the world, right? Yep. We have everything we need, but we just have to be able to figure out how to use it. And sometimes, like, you know, just listening to you and in the beginning, how you were saying, you know, some people want to charge so much money for the information they have. $9 is nothing. Yeah. And for $9, you also feel accountable. That, you know, like, I'm paying for this, I should act on it, because there's so much information and we have so much access to that information, but we just don't act on it, right? And that's
a fact. That's a fact. And the reason I charge at $9 because it forces me to reach more people. Like, I can easily, you know, sell a $500 course or $2,000 course to 500 people and make $1 million.
Oh yeah,
easily, especially with the people that I know right. in the circles that I've been around. But my thing is, am I trying to help, you know, 500 people, or am I trying to help a lot? And if I want to make $1 million doing this, I literally have to help 111,111 people, you know, just to get to that. And that's gross. That's not even net when they take off my fees. Right. So it's big to me. But I want to talk to you because, you know, you mentioned that you were into hotel real estate.
Yep.
And a lot of people sleep on hotels. Here in this area where we are, there are literally 5 new hotels.
Yep.
And this is an area that in Dallas, many people don't even see as an area where you would want to put a hotel, but someone saw it. Yeah. So talk to me about, like, who you are, where you're from, and how you even got into hotels.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. We'll definitely hit on that a little bit more. So, you know, as mentioned, I'm in Houston, Texas right now, but originally born and brought up in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, cool.
And so I'm a Buckeye. Yeah, that's what's up, man.
Oh, wait, so you in Longhorn country now?
Yeah, right? I know, man. It hurts. The Vince Young broke our heart a couple of times, but you know, I'm a Buckeye at heart. Sometimes it's Ohio against the world, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, we're in Houston. Houston. My wife, she's actually a physician. She's doing her residency there. So, we're there for a few years. And then, the idea is go back to Ohio. So most of my portfolio is actually based out of Ohio. Now, we are kind of expanding outside, and, we have a couple properties, couple things in the pipeline outside of Ohio.
Yeah.
But primarily, most of our portfolio is there. So, again, real estate was never the path. I was, just like a lot of brown people you might know, where, medicine was the thing our parents pushed us to do. And, all my cousins are doctors, but, I was kind of the black sheep. So
let me ask you this. So what, if you don't mind me asking, what's your ethnicity?
I'm Indian.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So I grew up around a lot of Indian people.
Yep.
So the neighborhood I grew up in, Pleasant Grove, which if I say that now, people will laugh, but that was a middle class area.
Yep.
And so on my street, we literally called it the United Nations because we had like 5 Indian families. We had two African families, like one from West Africa, one from East Africa.
Right.
We had a white couple, Hispanic couple, black couple, a couple from I think they were from Vietnam.
Okay.
And then you had us. So it was like there was so much different. And I went to school with them. So like my next door neighbor to the left and the right of me were both Indian.
Yeah.
And so I grew up around a lot of Indian people, and I know like some of the lingo. I know some of the stereotypes that
Were
come
they
with
some
it.
of the Patels?
Definitely a Patel.
Right?
Definitely a Patel. We had let me see. So we had Abraham next door to us. We had a Patel, and then we had I cannot think of the last name, but it was Cindy, Sibi, and Vishnu.
Yep.
I mean, like, so the typical
Some
stuff.
Punjabis. Yeah.
but I say all that to say this because I've always known for Indian people to do a handful of things. Medical, because my doctors growing up were Indian, and even a couple of our doctors now. My wife's doctor who delivered our baby or whatnot was an Indian person, but also hotels. Like most of the hotels here in Dallas, at least in this area, are owned by Indian people.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And it was, it's something that, as I think like that generation, as they came from India, the idea was, we can live here, we can manage a hotel, and those were more like motels, right? That's where they started. And then slowly, as the cash flow started coming in, they started leveling up, they were able to kind of get into the hotels. And, hotels so far, it's been such a niche thing where, a small group of people in America just own all the hotels, right? And so, right, and so, but that's a beautiful thing that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And anyone can get into hotels. And, to be honest, the problem is a lot of people, like you were talking about, a lot of people sleep on hotels. You're driving down.
No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. And so people see the Hiltons, Marriotts, and all these, and you just think Hilton owns all the hotels.
They don't.
Yeah, they don't, right? And so, even you as a, in your real estate, background, you've probably seen so many, transactions in the commercial real estate space happening, but you can own those real estate assets and you just franchise with Hilton or Marriott, right?
So when I got into, I'm really big into politics, and I was a zoning commissioner here in Dallas, twice appointed. But one thing I started to pay attention to when I got on the zoning commission is like when the zoning was getting ready to change, or if there's new construction, or if there's a permit, who's on the permit. And so as a kid, I knew that Indian people owned hotels because I knew Indian people that owned motels. And then a friend of mine, they had like a store. They were one of the only people that I knew that had a store on the bottom and they lived on top, right?
Yeah.
And but it was like, if you think about this, economical, right? And that's the whole purpose of me having these conversations, because I feel like, specifically as a black man, like, and as black people, we put ourselves in boxes from an economic standpoint. We feel like, hey, this is the only thing that we can do. And I noticed that every group has those boxes, but some groups tend to parlay it a little bit more, and those boxes tend to be a little bit more profitable than some of the boxes that we place ourselves in. So, let's talk about like what you saw as a kid, because I'm really big on 1, dispelling myths, 2, dispelling stereotypes, but 3, having the tough conversation. So what did you see growing up? Like the people who came from India, like what were their line of work? Like what was their course of action when they came to the United States? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think this is probably the most important thing about, why I'm able to do what I do. And it's because, growing up, I saw my parents, that whole generation, the way they came, from India into a country, they didn't know the language, they didn't know how it works, but they knew one thing, that they wanted to create a better future for their family, right? And they gave up everything they knew. They gave up their friends, their society, their favorite food in India, everything, right? Like their favorite restaurant, their memories, and they came to America for the dream, right? And so they they sacrificed, they worked so hard. And, you know, there were stories, you know, my dad would tell me that when he wanted to go and call his father in India, it would cost like $2 a minute, right? But they would be working $3 an hour jobs in New York. And so, you know, once in a while, my mom and my dad would get a slice of pizza, they would cut it in half, and they would split the pizza, and that would be their date night, right? And so everything that they sacrificed for us, you know, I wanted to make sure that whatever I did, I made them proud. And I kind of built upon, you know, that success. So, you know, and that's why there was so much pressure for us to become, you know, engineers or doctors or whatever, because they wanted us to have that life that they
financial
never did.
freedom. And I talk about that because I notice when a lot of people come from different countries, they specifically choose certain fields that are going to allow them to make the most money. So friends that I know who come from, you know, West Africa or East Africa, India, they always go into engineering. They go into the medical field. Those two primarily, like, you know, engineering and medical. And it's just like, it's not that they're any more smarter than the average person that's already here. They're looking at it from an economic standpoint of these are the fields that will always be there, that will always need my information or what I know, and I can always make pretty good money. I mean, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all it is, right? And it's them thinking, you know, them having that foresight is, you know, for my family, for my kids, I want them to have the stability that we never had. Yeah. And that's the idea behind it. And so when I came in and I said, hey, I want to do real estate, you know, my dad became an entrepreneur, and he started in real estate, and he's kind of, you know, I call him one of my board of advisors, but, you know, he's the guy I go to when, you know, I know nothing else, I don't know what to do, and I just need a soundboard to play off of. And he's, you know, I call him my board of advisor, but really he's my role model. Right. And so I go to him, and, you know, when I first had that conversation that, hey, you know, I'm a neuroscience major, but I don't want to go to med school anymore. He was like, listen, I did this because I had to. Why are you doing this? You know, and that's when, you know, it really. Go ahead.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. No, finish your thought. Yeah. And I know what I'm going to say. Finish your thought.
No worries. So that's when I, you know, had to really dig deep and figure out, you know, why do I want to go into real estate? And for me personally, it was because I'm passionate about so many things, and I want to have that freedom of time to be able to pursue other passions that I do have. So,
you know, and the reason I interrupt you is because, you know, when I was in grad school, I had to study a lot about the diaspora, which is a black diaspora from, you know, wherever black people came from to America. And I studied like Nigerian Americans, how they came over like in the 50s and 60s. Like the first wave of Nigerians came in the 50s and 60s. And so I have a lot of Nigerian friends here in Dallas, and Houston has a large population of Nigerian people as well. Dallas has a large population of Indian people, especially in Plano and Allen.
And Las Colinas.
Irving, right? Because they're all in tech.
I was just in Irving right before I came here, right?
And so, so I'm saying all that to say, like, I see a lot of people that are my age now, the second, the third generation. They're kind of veering off course. They're not, you know, becoming doctors, and they're not becoming engineers anymore. They're getting into, you know, law. They're getting into real estate. Just getting into different aspects of business that are not rooted in the traditional pathway of what their family followed. I mean, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Are you seeing that amongst your friends?
I am. And it's absolutely true, because, you know, our parents, they didn't have the luxury to pursue art or real estate or all these things. They had to do whatever opportunity was available to them, and whatever's going to bring the food on the table, right? Whatever's going to get me to college, whatever's going to get, you know, my sister and I a good life. Right. But we have the luxury, and we have a platform to build off of. Okay. So when I have a platform of real estate, now I don't have to go into the motels. I don't have to go into the 20-room motels, but we can go into the 100-room Hiltons. Okay. I can go into the 150-room Marriotts, the dual properties. I can go into those kinds of properties because I have a platform that I can build off of, right? Versus, you know, our parents, and when they came, you know, they had to do whatever was available to them, and if that door isn't open, they can't pursue that. And so, you know, a lot of your friends now in second and third generations, who knows, you know, my wife and I were just having a conversation. What if our kid wants to be a musician? You know, there's no job security there, but it's okay. You know, they can fail. We can allow them to fail, because we know that we have a platform that will allow them to fail and support them even if they don't make it. So
no, that's real. I was just talking about, I actually just edited a video and I posted it online where I was talking about my son, and how, you know, he watched me become an entrepreneur through real estate and through rental properties. And, you know, I'd always ask him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He's like, I want to be a real estate broker. And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, my mother worked for the government, and she always told us never get a job for the government. Right. And so, like, you know, it wasn't that she didn't want us to be successful, because that created success for her, but she wanted us to find success in a different way. Right. Like, you don't have to follow a certain, you know, niche. And so me and my sister, we went two totally different ways, but we've both been extremely successful. And now I'm teaching my son, like, be what you want to be. So he says he wants to be an attorney now. But I'll never forget the first time we went to go pick up rent in our house, the one that we used to live in. He's like, Dad, why are these kids in our room? You know, why are they in my room? And I said, son, this is your college fund now. This isn't, you know, our home. And it's like it starts to click at an early age, like, oh, okay, I need investments, because the investments, albeit a hotel, a commercial space, residential property, that's what's going to finance the rest of your life. Yeah. You know, through it creating you income. And, so, yeah.
And that's so true, because, you know, and the other part of that, or the other angle of that, is your background determines your perspective. Absolutely. On whatever it is, right? So I give this example sometimes, but when I was a kid, my sister and I, we would be so excited when the weather's showing snow, and we'd turn our PJs inside out, we'd do our snow dance, we do all that stuff, and we'd pray that we have a snow day the next day. Now, as a business owner, I pray that we never have snow, because and obviously Texas not familiar with it, but in Ohio, we have to make sure the snow gets plowed. We have to make sure the sidewalks are, you know, shoveled, salted, nobody's gonna slip, cars aren't slipping, there's no accidents on our property. You know, there's so many things, and sometimes that costs $700 per property. So now snow means something so different to me. So my perspective, the lens that I wear, affects, you know, how I think, how I view the world, and that perspective so much.
Well, that's evolution, right? You know, the way we see things, you know, the way we saw things 20 years ago is not how we see it today. And I always tell people, specifically on my platform, like, you have to evolve. You have to get away from the way you were taught. Like, most of the things that we were taught are bullshit. Yeah. And so you have to be, you know, wise enough to acknowledge that it was bullshit, not be upset because, you know, you were passed down a bunch of bullshit, not because you have bad parents or bad people around you, but because that's just the way things were. And then start creating a situation where I'm going to completely do the exact opposite to create a new lens and a perspective. And then once you start traveling down that new road, you'll see, oh, okay, this is why people do this. This is why people do that. Oh, that's why this doesn't make sense. But, you know, that's something to me. You said when it snows in the hotel business, that's the worst day of your life, because now people stepping out of the car, they're moving luggage, they fall, they're going to sue you. Yeah. Like, it's inevitable, right?
Yeah. And I mean, even them bringing that into the hotel, just as simple as that, right? They bring their snow, muddy shoes into the hotel. Now I got to make sure it gets cleaned. If I don't, I get a bad review. Just even to the most minor, simple things, it's a butterfly effect. The smallest thing changes the whole course of the day, the month, the year, whatever it may be.
No, I stayed in a hotel this weekend in Sacramento, and there was a robotics convention or something going on, so all the hotels were booked. And so I stayed in a hotel like right outside of Sacramento, and the first room they put me in, I don't know if the cleaning lady mixed some formulas, but it smelled... It was disgusting. It smelled like urine, essentially. So I walked into the room, and I was like, oh, and it was a big room, had a kitchen, had all that stuff in it. And I was like, I can't do this. So I told the lady downstairs, and she's like, you know, maybe we can put the ozone machine in there. And the ozone machine, of course, is a machine that, you know, gets rid of the smell. So they ran the ozone machine for like 30 minutes or an hour and came back, and it still stunk. And I was like, I can't do this. So she accommodated me, put me in another room. Everything was good to go, but she was like, man, you got lucky because we're super booked. But just imagine, like, that one thing, I would have left a bad review. I would have been like, oh, this hotel sucks, you know.
And that's all this money. That's the hardest thing we have to deal with, because, you know, we always leave, and I'm guilty as well. And whenever I go to a restaurant, for example, if I love the food, I barely ever put a review down, you know, but if I hate it, oh, you bet.
Everyone's gonna know about it.
Oh yeah, you bet I'm gonna put a 1-star on that, right? So, and that's the biggest challenge is, like, you know, even though 90 people have a great experience and 10 people have an even mediocre experience, the mediocres will put their review 3-star, 2-star, whatever it may be, right? But out of the 90 good, only 3 or 4 people will put a positive review, and so that's always the challenge we face. But hey, you know, like, we all read the reviews before we stay at a place.
We always gravitate to the worst one. Like, I don't know what that's about. It'll be like a 4.9 rating. I'm like, let me see what that one person has to say.
That's what my wife and I were going somewhere, and I'm like, oh, this place looks good, and she's like, no, but look at this one, you know. And there's 10 great reviews and one bad.
Yeah, we got to stop giving.
Yeah, come on. So,
we got to stop pouring so much energy into that. So I want to talk to you about something because, I've had the opportunity to grow up around a lot of people who immigrated to this country, right? Whether it be their families or their second generation. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that, I always say this, and I don't want you to take it any kind of way. Actually, I want you to tell me what you think about it.
Yeah.
I always say that countries send their best.
Yeah.
Right. So the people who come over from an immigration standpoint are typically the top tier people from that country, because most of the people that I know who come over here, they have to send money back to support. And I've had a chance to visit a lot of countries, and I realized that a lot of countries tend to have a lot of poverty. Like, we have poverty here, but it's not like poverty outside the United States. Like what are your thoughts on that? Because, the stereotype is going to say that every person from an Asian country is smart and they know all this stuff. And, I worked at a telecommunication company. And so I quickly learned that those stereotypes are just stereotypes, right? Because I was around people every day. But, how do you handle those stereotypes? And would you agree with me when I say that most countries send their best?
Yeah, and I think anytime you look at something like that and try to make a statement like that, there's some correlation, right?
Yeah.
And I think the reason why that happens is because anyone who's willing to leave their country, and we alluded to this in the beginning, anyone who's willing to give up what they do, like, imagine tomorrow if I have to leave America. Like, I was born and raised here, right?
Yeah.
If I have to leave this place and move to, like Nigeria, for example, right? You mentioned. What would I do?
What if you had to move back to India, or not move back? What if you had to move to your parents' homeland? Like, how would you adapt?
How would I don't know. Like, I know the language, but I'm not as fluent. I don't know the ways. I don't know the processes. I don't know the laws. But to have that drive that I'm going to go there to do something, that's having a goal. Yeah. That's being passionate. And when you have a goal like that, any obstacle, there's no mountain high enough, right? Like like the song, there's no mountain high enough. There's no river wide enough. It doesn't matter, right? When you have that kind of drive inside of you, you're going to do it. And I know you play a lot of sports and stuff, but I'm going to give a sports example. Yeah. Giannis, right? Giannis Antetokounmpo, he came from Greek. They call him the Greek Freak. And when he came to America, he was an NBA player, and he used to walk to the games because he didn't have enough money. And every dollar he made in his first few paychecks, he would send home to his family. Now, if you look at the transformation of who he was to who he became, that doesn't just happen to anyone, and it doesn't happen to, the most privileged kids, but it happens to the kid who has a drive, who gives up everything to chase a dream. And I think that's what these immigrant families are, right? Like, they gave up everything for a dream, and to achieve that dream, they'll do anything because, they know what they've sacrificed.
So I'm going to go deeper into this. Yeah. I promise you this isn't a social, show. But I just want to talk because I feel like a lot of people have misconceptions, and they have their own thoughts of how things really are. And until they actually go experience, see, or meet someone who's actually done those things, then they can understand. And I talk to people because whenever I go out and speak to young men, when I mentor, when I speak, most of the people have never left their city. Yeah, they've never left their area. The kids that we mentor here, the only time we took some kids on a trip a few years ago, and many of them, it was their first time leaving Dallas. And so it's like we have this idea of what something is based on what we see on television. And a lot of people come to America and they see black people and they have this terrible impression of black people, right? But once they start getting around us, it's like, oh, that's the stereotype. That's not everyone. Right. So I always want to have these conversations with people from other places because I know, or at least I would think that I know, that you probably deal with some of the same stereotypes, even if you were to go back to where your parents were from. Like, do they see you differently? Do they see that, oh, this person thinks he's better than me? Or, like, do you experience that, or am I reaching?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And, even here, like, even though I was born and raised here, obviously, color of our skin. And, the Indian stereotypes, like, oh, curry, you eat curry every day, or you believe in an elephant god. Like, I've heard it all, right? Like, I remember, so I'm vegetarian, and I remember when I was in elementary school, one of my buddies wore a shirt, and he was a friend of mine. He was just poking fun, but he's like, he had a thing that said "Save cows, eat vegetarians," And he's like, "Yo, look at my shirt," right? So sometimes it's light and it's fun and whatever, but sometimes it does become hard, and I've seen my parents be judged because and they've been here for over 25 years, 30 years, more than that actually, but because they have an accent still, I've seen them them be judged.
Yeah.
You're treated a little bit differently, and the other person may not even mean ill, but it happens, and I think we all do it to an extent. And when I do go to India, one of the things, Indian people are very shrewd. So in India, like, they can read you really quick. And when you go to the market, you go to the flea market, the same thing that my mom would buy for, like, and over there the currency is rupees, same thing she would buy for like 100 rupees. They just look at me and they charge me 150.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if you go, they're gonna charge you 250.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So
I know the game.
Yeah.
That's how they do. That's how they do us when we go to Jamaica, or we go to countries where it's mostly black people. Anywhere in the Caribbean, like, they automatically assume we went to Cuba.
Yeah.
We got a Cuban tour guide, and a lot of people don't know, like, Cuban is 90% black.
Right.
But you wouldn't know that.
I would never expect
if you
that.
Google people of Cuba, they don't show the black people, right? And so, like, our tour guide was black. He actually lives in Dallas now, you know. But he explained to us that there's two currencies. You have the Cuban currency for the locals, and then you have the tourist currency. So, like, the first day we got taxed. Like, we paid like $80 for some shit that was American food. So he's like, oh no, I'm gonna take you to the neighborhood. And we got like a full meal that fed all three of us for like $8.
Right.
You also need to know, when you're going into different situations, how to deal with certain people and understanding their customs. Don't disrespect certain customs. Not assume that a person is a certain way because they're from a certain place. Not attach a stereotype to a person because they look a certain way or because, they come from a certain background. So that was something I also learned from that story too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's so important that you say that, talking about stereotypes. Like, one of the things, like, at least back in the day, like, women in India used to be a little bit more shy. And so, when you don't look, directly like at them, it would, you have to be a little bit more subtle, and they're a little bit more like conservative, like, especially when you go into the villages and things like that. Right. And if you're not exposed to that, or you don't understand the way different people are and different cultures are, like, over here in America, like, you look people in the eyes, and that's a sign of respect, and that you respect them. And it's a show of, I am someone, like, that little bit of that confidence as well. And so even my sister, like, I always told her, like, make sure you look at whoever you look at in the eyes, things like that. And so it's just a big cultural difference, and that could get misinterpreted so easily.
So I know we're going to talk about the hotels eventually, but whenever we go down a rabbit hole, and I feel like the viewers can benefit from these conversations, I'll go down the rabbit hole. Talk to me about how you navigate in business, with that, because I understand, being someone who, one thing we do have in common is that we're not the traditional American prototype, right? So whenever we walk into a room, a person's ideologies and their stereotypes about who they think we are will often surpass, or often, overcome who we really are. And then we find ourselves having to say, wait, no, that's not who I am. Like, this is who I am. So it's like this balancing act to get people to see you for who you are. And I'm at the age where I'm just like, fuck it. Like, you either accept me for who I am or who I'm not. But in your line of work, going into business, acquiring properties, dealing with these big corporations, like, do you ever experience that, or is it one of those things where the stereotype works in your favor? Yeah, no. And so specifically in the hotel industry, stereotype definitely worked in our favor, because everyone they deal with is Indian in a sense. And not everyone. I mean, there's all kinds of people, but there's a large population.
Yeah, majority of it. And one of the biggest, like, hotel conventions that we have is Asian American Hotel Owner Association. And so that's one of the biggest conventions that we go to. But outside of that, we definitely did have to deal with that. And one of the hardest things that I had to deal with personally was being younger. And it's funny because, in the beginning, when I used to pick up a phone call, hello, I'd change my voice, try to make myself sound, older or more experienced or, wiser. Even though I knew my stuff.
Because that hierarchy, that matters in certain cultures.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's huge. That the whole respect your elders, that matters, that age.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with, like, the 55-year-olds, bank lenders who, come from a certain culture, and they think that they have their suit on and they think they know everything, they think they know more than you, and then you have this a 27-year-old roll up and say, hey, I need a $10 million loan, I got $2 million to put down. They don't take you seriously right away, right? And so one of the things I contemplated was, how do I battle this? And one thing I thought of was do I get an MBA from one of the top 5 schools in America? You know, then I can slap my credentials and say, hey, you know, it doesn't matter what I look like, but look what I have here, right? So, and you have to judge that and kind of figure out what's the easiest way to get past that.
Did that work for you?
And no, well, I decided I didn't want to do that because you know, 2 years, you know, it's an investment, and then, you know, that's 2 years less of growth that I can, you know, have while pushing. And so, you know, instead, what I did was I found a way to get one deal done, and then I said, instead of an MBA, I'm going to slap my portfolio on the table and say, this is what I've done. This is who I am. You know, like, you don't judge me by what I look like or anything else, but judge me by my work. Judge me by what I've done.
Can't deny the work. And that's who I am. You can't deny the work.
Exactly.
Like, you know, when I would go into rooms, especially here in Dallas, because I would be on certain, you know, boards and committees, and then I got appointed to certain positions down at the city, and it's just like, people would always like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And then they start reading the resume. It's like, oh, well, this is what I've done. Here are the receipts.
Yeah.
And here are the invoices, right?
Right.
So you can say whatever you want to say about me, but here it is. And I'm a person like, I went out and got the master's degree and all that shit too. I've never earned a single dollar off of any of my degrees.
Yo, I'm a neuroscience major. I'm a neuroscience major from Ohio State. I don't use a lick of that. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. I don't use a lick of the frontal lobe. And you know,
guys have a really good veterinarian school, right? Or Ohio State?
And Ohio State, yeah, we have a pretty good like science department.
Science department, yeah.
And even business, MBA school, and I can't believe I did.
They have a good law school too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about going to law school.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Ohio State's the best. It's the Ohio State University.
Yeah. Here we go. Here we go.
I'm just playing. I won't go down that.
No, but you know, it's funny you say that, because a lot of times, you know, when I talk to people when I'm consulting, you know, the number one thing I tell people is just get started. Just go out there and do it. Fail, be told no. No is the best thing that you can ever be told in business, because no typically means not right now.
Yeah.
But it also teaches you how to find the yes.
Yep.
Like, if you're telling me no, if I go to 20 people and 20 people tell me no, I'm going to have to make some sort of adjustment. And I'm the type of person, I'll ask, well, hey, if you don't mind me asking, you know, and I'm not asking you to sign or do anything now, but what would have given me a yes? Like, I'll ask that.
Yeah.
And then they start explaining that. It's like, oh, okay, so this is what people want.
Yeah.
And then you go and you adjust your approach based on what a person wants, and then you supply that need, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of people think of that way. They think, oh, I go out there, I'll ask for help, or I'll do it one time, I fail. I'm supposed to hit a home run the first time at bat, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and that's entrepreneurship, right? And that entrepreneurship is figuring out where you want to go and figuring out a way to get there. And so when you hear no, instead of getting dejected, it was funny. I was listening to someone, but they said, how do you know that you failed? And it's when you fail on Sunday and you don't get up on Monday to go back to work. That's failure. If you go back to work on Monday and you grow upon that and you learn from it, that's not failure.
It's not failure.
Edison didn't fail. Edison succeeded. But if he stopped after the 99 time, or, you know, after failing so many times, if he stopped, then he would have been a failure, right?
Yeah.
So
he had a lot of black slaves helping him too. I'm just, I mean, we're gonna put it out there. Right?
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do it. Scratch that example.
No, I'm just fucking with you. It's America, man. And most people had a lot of black slaves helping them out. But no, here's the thing. What you're saying is real, because I think about like Elon Musk.
Right.
You know, let's even scale back. I remember when Amazon was a bookstore.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was in college, like, you only went to Amazon to buy college books.
Right. That's crazy.
I would have never in a million years have thought that I'm getting a package from Amazon.
I didn't know you were that old.
I'm old. A lot of people don't realize I turned 40 this year.
Oh, wow.
And so, and my goal is to help 100 people become millionaires by the age of 45. I actually came out of retirement to do that. That's
you're
what
going to do it, man.
But Amazon, like, think about just 10 years ago, Amazon was a bookstore. Yeah. And Tesla, I mean, that Tesla was completely failed product 5 years ago. Yeah. And look at it now.
Yep. It's crazy. It's crazy to see. And you're telling me that they didn't fail. You know, there's no way, right? Like, I'm sure that they hit that no so many times, and just like you, they figured out a way to turn that no into a yes. And the beautiful thing about business is you don't need any one person. You just need yourself.
You need yourself.
You go to one.
Speak on that. Go dive into that a little bit more.
No, I mean, you go to one. There's 100 lenders out there. You know, you go to one lender, they say no to you. You ask them, you know what, like, just like you did, and that's I respect that so much that you said that, and you ask them, what could I have done better, right? And you adjust that pitch, and you go, there's a billion banks. You go to the next bank right across the street, and they don't know you. So you run that back, and you practice, and you figure out, you know, what you need to do, how to adjust. But the most important thing is, like you said, show up. Take that first step, because if you don't do that, then you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's why Socrates was so great, is he always said, I know one thing. I know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's you know, it's funny. You said something. You said you go to one bank, they tell you, you go to the next. They don't know. They didn't see you at the other bank. A lot of times we think that our failure is on a big screen. We think that every time we fail, that every person in the world has seen that failure, or even if you could put something online and you look stupid. Like, I do a lot of events now for people who have blue checks and they have name recognition and name notoriety, if you will. It amazes me how many people don't know these guys. Like, I'm like, I'm putting on this event for such and such. You're like, who's that? And it's like, you don't know who this is? Like, never heard of him a day in my life.
Right.
And it's like, within my sphere of influence, this person means something. This person has a big name, but literally the next person certain one sitting right next to me, who's from exactly where I'm from, we grew up in the same area, went to the same schools. They have no fucking clue who this person is. So from a lending standpoint, it's the same thing. Like, shop around. Let's talk about that in the hotel industry. What type of loans do you have to get? Like, I'm assuming they're commercial loans, specialized lenders. How does that work?
Yeah. So in the hotel industry, the way it works, and so I'm in development as well as acquisition. And so, you know, we'll focus on acquisition for this example, but when I find an asset that I love, right, it's great cash flow, stabilized asset, and I decide, hey, you know, we want to add this to the portfolio. So we write up a pro forma, we take it to the bank, and, you know, just like we talked about a little bit before the show, there's so many different options when coming to lending. You can go SBA, you go USDA, there's recourse, there's non-recourse.
You've done USDA on the hotel?
So there was a hotel project that we were doing. It was a new construction in Nevada, and it was a Hampton Inn, simple 80-room box. And because it's a tertiary site, it was in a town called Fallon.
What's tertiary?
It's not a primary location. It's not a secondary location, but it's a little more rural. You know, maybe not like the most pop-in place that you'd imagine. And so because it was a little bit of that like rural location, nobody was lending to us, and USDA is typically a little bit more open to doing those kinds of loans, just like we discussed a little bit before.
That's why you were saying that the fees were high, because it was that type of deal. Because on the home buying, the single family, multifamily home buying side, it's a whole different world. So, but go ahead. On
the commercial side, like for us on the USDA side, they were charging us, you know, a little bit more on the front end, but you know, on the flip side, they were offering, you know, 90% of the value. And so we only had to put 10% down. Yeah, it's great. But, you know, me being me, we always look at every single dollar, and it has to be justified. So I'm not afraid to put 25% down if that's going to get us a better deal in the long run, right? And operationally, we have to make sure that it doesn't put too much burden to meet that debt service.
That's interesting.
And so, but yeah, so many options. Conventional, you know, you can get conventional loans from regional banks. You can, you know, go with CMBS and get non-recourse loans.
So let's say, and I don't want you to give away too many of your trade secrets. I want to get into the hotel space. I met you. I'm like, man, this guy's pretty interesting. He's doing pretty well for himself. You know, he's gonna bring me as his guest to the you know, the Asian American hotel owners.
I got you, bro.
You know what I'm saying? I'll be walking around like, hey, you know, I'm from the east side of
Bro, you don't like Indian food. I don't know what you're going to do there.
I didn't like that Indian food. But like, how would let's say I want to get in, you know, and start, like, what would that look like for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two ways to really get into the hotel space. So one is, you know, you have to decide, do you want to be a passive investor? Do you want to invest into the hotel space? And, you know, the great thing about hotels is there's so much cash flow, right? It's not just, it's a business plus real estate. And so you have that appreciation upside, but you also have the cash flow that you're getting every single year. So that's great for dividends sakes, right? So you have that cash on cash return. Typically it's about 12% is what we target.
It's not bad.
It's great.
That's not bad at all,
actually. Yeah, it's great. And that's cash on cash. So then you're paying down your loan, your mortgage, you're building equity. You could refinance, you know, 5-7 years, you pull out all your equity, and now it's unlimited ROI, right? So that's the great thing about hotels. But yeah, again, going back, there's two ways to do it. So one is you invest in a sponsor or a syndication that you believe is, you know, someone that you trust, someone that you feel like, you know, knows what they're doing. You trust your money with them. And
being like a Marriott, a Hilton.
No,
sponsor.
so example, something like what we do is sometimes we raise capital on our deals.
Okay.
And so when we raise capital, you know, we have investors, and so the investors will invest with us. You know, I make sure that, you know, our project is going to be successful. I do my best to maximize returns, efficiency, and I'm the expert, right? So I'm the expert. So I put in, you know, all that expertise into the project and make it profitable. And then we give back our dividends to our investors. So that's one way to become an investor and to invest in someone else's project.
Okay.
The second way to do it is to become the sponsor yourself. So whether that means you want to invest all the capital yourself and get into the hotel space, or you can raise capital.
Okay.
And the great thing about hotels is because we have that cash flow, it makes for a great syndication where you can raise the capital, give back dividends, your investors are happy, and now all of a sudden you got a foot in the door on this deal.
So you're giving back the dividends plus you're walking away with the 10 to 12%?
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good business model.
Well, no, so you're giving back the dividends of the 10, 12%.
Okay.
And me as a sponsor, there would be some sort of split depending on the project. So, you know, it would be like an 80-20 split. So 80% of the profit goes to the investors, 20% goes to the sponsors. Or, I mean, you can structure it so many different ways. You could take, you know, management fees or development fees, things like that.
So once the mortgage is paid off, is that when everything goes away, or do they eat off of that property forever?
No, they eat off of it forever. And you can structure it the way you want. If you want to buy them out, refinance, buy them out, then you can do that. And then now you own the property free and clear, 100%. So there's different ways to structure it. The way I do it is, you know, I keep my investors in the deal. I mean, they're the ones
going to get more deals.
Yeah, and they're the ones who supported us. So the more money I give to them, the more that they're going to invest back into our next deal, right? And there's a large like tax component to it too with hotels. You get a lot of tax benefits.
Really?
So a lot of large investors will invest. There's something, you know, we call it cost segregation. And so they allow you to depreciate the value of the business. You know, last year was 100%. I think this year it's about 80% of the value. So, you know, last year, if we had a project, people invest, you know, $1 million, they could potentially get $1 million of depreciation.
Really?
Yeah. So it's great tax, you know, benefits on the hotel side as well. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. So now if I wanted to go into like, I think a lot of people think that whenever they want to do something like this, they just kind of jump into it. Like, if I wanted to do an 80, what do you call it, an 80 room hotel that's on the outside of, let's just say, Waxahachie, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, do I go directly through Hilton? Like, how do I become a franchisee?
Yeah. And so if you want to build one, it's a different story. And I don't recommend going straight into new development, new construction. Yeah, because, you know, when we're building something, you have the luxury to kind of structure it the way you want. You can do value engineering. You can say, hey, you know, if I put this door this way, it's going to help me so much on the operations. And you have the luxury to do that. If you've never operated a hotel, then you kind of lose that advantage of being able to develop it. So, you know, for someone who's getting into the hotel industry first time, you know, I would look for properties that are on sale, first of all. So let's say you find an 80, we call it keys. So an 80 key hotel, you know, off the side of the road in, you know, some suburb over here, right? What you want to do first is you want to reach out to the agent, just like you would any commercial real estate property. You reach out to the agent, you figure out what price point makes sense. You get, the best thing about this is you get historical data, right? So you can ask for the last 3 years of financials, and you can see how that property's been doing. Let's say you manage it exactly the way it's been managed. You can see what your profit is going to be. You can see, you know, what the revenue is going to be. You can see what the expenses are, and you can see it for the last 3 years. You can see, is it trending up? Is it trending down? Is it, you know, consistent all the way through? So that gives you a little, you know, it's a little bit risk adjusted in that sense. It's like you can understand, okay, what's my risk going to be here? So first you do that, you evaluate the hotel, you do your underwriting. If anyone wants to learn how to underwrite, you know, hit me up after this. But, you know, you do the underwriting. I won't go into it too much, but you do the underwriting, you can put an LOI. And once that's accepted, once you're in contract, that's when you put in an application with Hilton or Marriott, and they do their background check and they understand who you are and might have some interview questions and things like that. And, you know, they want to make sure that you're a good fit for them as well. And you want to make sure that this brand is a good fit for you. So there's a little bit of that process. Obviously, they're going to charge their fees and their franchise fees. And, you know, you kind of go on like that.
What is that typically?
So you know, when you get into the bigger brands, Marriott, Hilton, it's quite expensive. So I think on our last one, Marriott charged us $175,000 just to become a franchisee. But you know, when you're working with, like, you know, you don't want to start out with a Hilton or Marriott. You want to start out with, you know, maybe a Quality Inn or a Motel 6 or a Super 8, and you want to kind of learn and scale up. Yeah, scale up, right? Nobody starts with a, you know, $80 million multifamily unit when they want to get into real estate. But
that's the unrealistic expectations that a lot of people have. And that's one of the reasons I do this podcast, is because I feel like many of the pitfalls and many of the hills that people have to climb, the unrealistic hills that they never get the top of, is based on unrealistic expectations. Like, we want to show up and we want to win. We don't want to look stupid. We don't want to fail. Like, most of this stuff is failure for the first couple of years, and it's failure adjust, failure adjust, failure adjust. Okay, I'm starting to come out of the brush a little bit. Okay, I'm starting to win. Oh, now it makes sense. And then you know, unless you have someone who's a mentor that's done this for the last decade or two, you're going to fail. You're going to bump your head. And a lot of this stuff isn't cheap.
Yep.
You know, and I always tell people, if you're spending your last, don't even do it.
Don't do it.
Because you're going to be operating from desperation.
Yeah.
You're going to be operating from, this has to work. When I used to have agents working under me, the agents who felt like, Tim, I have to sell a house right now, but then they weren't doing what they need to do, I would cut them loose. Like, nope, you're not going to be a good fit here because you're desperate. Yep. You need the money right now, but you don't have the work ethic right now, and you're not willing to fail right now. So I just wanted you to talk about that, because you know, there's so many hotels that are not associated with big brands here in Dallas, and I pass them and I see them change hands so much, and I'm thinking to myself, why can't these hotels keep the same name for more than 5 years, you know? Yeah,
no, definitely. And going back to what you said right before this is, you know, I will say it's what I agree with you, but at the same time, anyone can do it, but it might not be day one. Right? You have to build yourself there, right? So you start out with maybe a residential rental property or an Airbnb, a short-term rental, right? Because that's a little bit, I mean, we are a short-term rental game, right? So it's hospitality. It's hospitality. So you get an Airbnb, you understand how reviews impact you, how to change rates daily. You learn a bit of that operation. You learn what it means to invest. You know, it's funny because, you know, my wife's in the medical field, and she's kind of a little bit out of this real estate space. So, you know, when I invest in a property, she's like, man, we just lost so much money. I'm like, we didn't lose it. We invested it. We own an asset, right? But it's a little bit of that shift of, you know, mindset, perspective, the way to think things, the way to perceive it. And so get into something, build upon it, you know, go from a single family to a duplex to a quad. And then when you get there and you get a base knowledge, then you can do it. Then anyone can do it. Right. So, and you know, real estate's not a get rich quick scheme.
It's not. It's a get rich slow.
Yeah. But it's surely.
Yeah, it's definitely surely. You know, I was telling people 5 years ago about areas in Dallas where they should purchase houses at. Me and my wife are finding properties for $20,000 and less, and people would continuously tell me, I don't want to live there. I don't want to live there. And I said, I never told you to move there. I said, buy the property. Well, now those properties have inflated times 10.
Yep.
And it's like, I told you guys, you know, but you buy and you hold. You know, rent never goes down.
Right.
Like, I don't know how many different ways I can say that. Rent never goes down. In the history of rent, I've never seen rent go down. As long as I've been alive, rent has never gone down. So, you know, and then I think about hotels so much differently, because being on a zoning commission, my mindset is, well, in a city like Dallas that has a housing shortage, maybe I can get a big older hotel and convert that to a, you know, condos or multifamily, right? And so, I just look at it differently, like, and in the way that the world is going, the whole tiny house and all this stuff, like, people don't really need a lot of space anymore. Like, there's people who, in my opinion, would take an older building that has, you know, a kitchen inside of it, a bathroom, a little small area to live, and then they go in and out. So I look at it like that. That's what made me interested in hotels, honestly.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right, especially about the tiny. So it's cool because these brands, they do so much research on, you know, where the world is going. And so it's cool. Hilton and Holiday Inn, so IHG, their umbrella company, they came out with 2 new brands in the last few years. One is called the True and one is called the Avid. And those are, the rooms are a lot smaller. They took out the clunky desk that nobody uses.
Nobody uses
right?
that.
And so they took a couple of those things out and they made them, you know, platform, sleek, kind of into the wall. The closet flushes into the wall. It's not a separate door, all that stuff. And they made these tiny 250 square foot rooms that, I mean, they are kind of tight, but now you can sell them at a more economical price. Housekeeping is a lot cleaner, quicker to do. And, you know, they have the LVT, so housekeeping could be in and out. So we can kind of afford selling them at a lower price.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's cool that you said that because the world is really shifting that way.
It is.
And
things are getting so much more smaller now.
Smaller,
and
yeah.
more compact. I was looking at like designs of apartments like in New York City and places where like literally all the furniture is on the on the ceiling.
Yeah.
So you walk in and it's like there's this little couch or whatnot, and then the bed comes down from the ceiling, and everything is just so compact. Yeah. And they're making all this furniture that looks like the bookcases in colleges. You know how they come in and out. And I'm like, wow, is this what the world is coming to? And the answer is yes.
And some people pay more for that, right? They're like the tiny homes that are in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. San Antonio has a tiny home community that's getting ready to drop where it's like, I mean, those houses are no bigger than this studio, you know, maybe a little bit slightly bigger, but that's what people are going to.
Yeah, you got your bedroom, your kitchen, your everything in this space.
Yeah, people are living in vans, conversion vans. Right. And I don't know if that's a real estate thing because the market is so bad, or if people are just not needing all that space.
Yeah, I think, and it's also an experience thing, right? And so, but yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing about hotels, right? It's at the end of the day, it's real estate. And as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to analyze, okay, this piece of real estate, what can I do with it? How can I make it profitable? How can I make it work for me? Right. And so whether that's converting multifamily into a hotel, short-term rental, or a house into a short-term rental, Airbnb, or turning that old hotel, renovating it and turning it into apartments, you have to figure out what makes the most sense. And sometimes hotels on the side of the road that you're like, why would anyone visit here? Like, how does this work? It works because there's a niche in that market that we don't know of, whether it's travelers that are traveling through every single day, you know, traveling nurses, maybe there's a hospital nearby, maybe there's small companies that we've never heard of, 50 employees, but they have consultants coming from all over the place. You know, I have a couple properties in more like secondary markets, and they do excellent because we have, you know, we have farms like Morningstar farms that, you know, they're growing and expanding. And as they grow and expand, they have people come in, they have delivery guys come in, and that runs our business. And so, you know, a lot of times you have to figure out, you have to zone in and see for that specific asset or that specific site, what's going to work for me.
What's going to work for you. I don't even think, how did you get into it? Did we even talk about that?
Like, no, we didn't.
How did you get into hotels?
We didn't, and you're going to laugh. So, again, my board of advisor, right? So he was into real estate. He did everything, man. This guy just grinded for our family. And like, you know, when he was 25, he was just a paper delivery boy, you know, rode his bike and delivered newspapers, and have so much respect for my dad. But, you know, he then got into the hotel space. And again, same thing. Like, he started with, you know, different brands, maybe not the Hilton, Marriott, but he started with, you know, different brands, smaller room prototypes. But, you know, he did excellent. Him and his partner, who, you know, I respect so much as well, you know, they crushed it. And so, you know, growing up, I kind of was always around that space. Yeah. And I saw what they did, and I saw how it, you know, changed our family and, you know, our life. And then, you know, naturally, you know, I just started hearing the lingo and being around it. And I had, you know, I looked up to him, and I was like, damn, I want to be an entrepreneur, you know? And so that's how I kind of got into it. And, you know, I was attached to medicine. I wanted to help people through medicine. You know, I started out with clinics. I opened up some clinics. It was low investment, did pretty well. And then when I exited out of that, I was like, you know, there's too much policy shifting and in the medical field, and I want to go into real estate.
So you open up clinics without, because you don't have to have a license to open up a clinic.
No, and that's the other thing, right? Like, you have to partner with people. You have to surround yourself with people that know more than you, and you have to leverage their intellect, their experience, their wisdom, and you have to leverage that to help you level up, right? And it's a symbiotic relationship. You know, you both give and both people succeed. So I actually partnered up with, I had a medical director, and so he was a doctor, physician, so I partnered with him. I partnered with another guy, help me use the licenses and all that stuff, and it saved me maybe 5 years in the development phase, and I was able to copy paste that model. So.
No, it's real, because you don't have to have necessarily, I don't think you need a real estate license to own a real estate company. Like, you can get a corporate license. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Until I got my corporate license. It's
That's
like,
crazy.
you don't even need a real estate license, to have that. You can have a corporate license, and then you can have like a broker, what they call a designated broker,
right,
in Texas. As long as you have a designated broker, that person can operate your office, and you just take a split or whatever you do. Like, there's so many loopholes, and a lot of times we feel like we have to become that subject matter expert on that one thing. But honestly, if you just learn business, how business works, how knowing that if you go into a business, you're not going to make 100% of the profit. Be okay. I always tell people I'd rather have 10% of 10 businesses than 100% of one business. Yeah. Because now I have all the liability, but the 10% business, hey, you guys do what you got to do. Just pay me back what I need to get at the end of the month, and we're good. Yep. And a lot of people, specifically where I come from, they don't see the value in that because they've never seen anyone do it. So now it's, how do you get people to show up to learn? So let's talk about what you're doing, and we can wrap this up. You're trying to introduce the world to hotels. Yep. And not just people from, Asian American or Asian backgrounds. Like, you're trying to teach everyone who will sit down and listen about hotels. Why is that so important to you to not, for lack of better words, and I'm not saying this out of context or saying this to dig or anything, but not keep it with one group, but more importantly, show people from no matter what background they come from, this is how you can make wealth and be successful in this. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a two-part answer to that. One is, I think it's a real estate class that's been overlooked for many years. And I think now the world is just becoming, it's so small, right? We have access to anything and everything. And if we don't take advantage of these things, then they kind of get lost and they go hidden, and, nobody appreciates it. And so it's something that I want to show appreciation to. I want people to understand what it is. And even if it's passively get into it, or if you want to become active, I mean, it's something that's changed my life. And I think, it can change so many people's lives, and give them that freedom to think, to dream, to grow, and to keep going in their life. And so, that's one reason. The other reason for me personally is, and again, we talked about it a little bit before, is, I want to make an impact at the end of the day. And I think, when I leave this life, I'm not going to take my assets with me. I'm not going to take my portfolio with me, but the actions that I did and the difference that I left, like, those are the things that I take on with me. And so, I want to make an impact with a brand, and I want to leverage it to do more in society, do more in the world, and to inspire values. And so that's truly my passion. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. So, well, listen, I always end every show the exact same way. So you're 27 years old, right? I'm 31 now. You're 31. Okay. So if 31-year-old you can go back and talk to 18-year-old you, my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies is Back to the Future 2, where he goes to the future and then he goes back to the past and he comes back to the future. But essentially there's a part in that movie where the character Biff, he goes back to talk to himself, and he says, hey, here's an almanac, a sports almanac. It gives you the outcome to every game. Just trust me on this. Bet on these games. And then he goes back and he's like a trillionaire, right? Yeah. So what's the advice that you would give 18-year-old you? You're walking down the hallway. It's just you and 18-year-old you. 18-year-old you looks up at you. He's like, man, this guy looks really familiar. You're like, hey, I'm you. I need you to hear this one thing. What would that be? Yeah, I mean, and so that would be by far the number one thing I would tell myself is don't be afraid. Because I think, we psych ourselves out so much before we even get to the door that we don't knock. And we close doors that we didn't even know existed. We close doors before we even knock. We say no to ourselves before we even try. And I think if there's anything that I've learned is that we as humans, we have the power to change our circumstance, no matter what circumstance it is. And only you have that power to do so, right? Like,
I have 2 legs, I have 2 arms, I have 2 eyes, the same as any billionaire, the same as any, you know, entrepreneur, the same as any like spiritual giant, whoever it may be. And I can do anything, right? I have the same mechanics. I can push myself. But the number one thing is like, don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to actualize your dreams.
That's dope, man. That's dope. Well, listen, I really enjoyed this episode. You know, I think you gave out some good information. It's important to sit down with people who come from all walks of life. You know, I want to be different in that aspect with this podcast. You know, the whole premise of No More OGs is, you know, there's not a lot of people out there that's giving out really good wisdom, really good game. A lot of stuff that's glorified by society, not just by a specific group of people, but by society is more like the celebrity worship and showing up and winning is the first time you show up. And I just kind of hate that. And I've had the great fortune of traveling around the world and seeing that it's not just a black thing. It's every culture has that same perspective. 1% of the culture, or the 1% of that group, pretty much controls everything that's going on in that culture. And I feel like in groups like mine, it's the 1% of the 1%, which makes that number even lower. So I want to put people in front of my audience that come from different walks of life, that understand the value of hard work, that persevere regardless of what's going on in life. They don't really look at life through the same lens as everyone else, but look at it from a different perspective. So I appreciate you for coming on the show. Where can we find you? Where if somebody's trying to reach out to you, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Find me on Instagram. My handle is Sujay Mehta, SUJMEHTA.
Okay.
So find me on Instagram, tap in. We're going to be launching a course here soon. So, you know, stay tuned for that. But yeah, you just, you know, tap in and, you know, we'll grow together.
And you price your course at whatever you want to price that course at. Don't let me talk you out of putting that shit at $1,000. Don't let me guilt you. No, this is my thing. It's funny because I speak a lot, so I have the cheapest course by far, right? But that's my approach. So if your shit is worth, you know, $1,000, charge them $1,000 because people got to pay for it, right? But listen, I thank you for coming on to the show today, you guys. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, give him a follow as well. All of his information will be in the show notes. Check out the $9 Academy. I'm eliminating excuses, everything that you want to learn that you feel like you should have been taught. It's available to you. Visit my website, www.timjacksonnow. Take my free credit course and never pay for credit repair again. I'm giving you all the tools. It's on you at this point. Like literally, I am doing this is an experiment, you guys. I'll be straightforward with you. I want to see how this social experiment plays out. Like if I give you all everything you need to be successful and I make it super cheap or free, will you go out and be successful? Because I want you to, but I'm going to look back, 5 to 7 years from now, and I'm going to say, if you're still complaining about shit that's not happening in your life, I'm going to say, nope, these courses have been out here forever and you never took it. And I look at the stats, I look and see who's taking it because I'm petty like that. And then I'm going to clown you because that's what I do. All right. But we're eliminating excuses, you guys. That's what the No More OGs podcast is about. Like, follow, subscribe, get tapped in. This is your man, Tim Jackson. I'll see you soon.
Yo, Tim's a baller. Tap in.
And we are out.